Good evening and welcome to March 13th Valley View School District Board meeting. After the pledge, I'm going to ask everybody to stand for a moment of silence. We've lost two children in our school district from the shooting and a community member. So with respect, we would like to do that after Mr. Baduris starts us with the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Stand. Thank you.
Next time we're going to have our little ones. I heard our little one right there very loud with the pledge. So next time we're going to let her lead the pledge.
Member Campbell, could you please read the affirmation of the Board of Education mission statement?
Yes. Our mission is to empower every learner to be college, career, and life ready, and to develop, grow, and achieve as a productive citizen.
Ms. Kinder, the agenda, please.
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask the board to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion or questions? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Baduris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
And President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes. Okay. VVSD Middle School STEM Decathlon 5.1.
Yes, we're excited to welcome John Lukanzik Middle School to the podium to be recognized. Welcome.
I'm excited too. Superintendent Kinder, President Pro Tempore Zach, members of the board, and our community senior leadership. I am so excited to introduce this year's winners of the VVSD STEM Decathlon, Lukanzik Middle School Flames. Good work. At the event this year, they were the smallest team, but they were the mightiest team. They persevered, they worked really, really hard, they got really creative, and they encouraged each other the entire night, and it totally paid off, and we're so excited. To introduce them, I'd like to bring up Mr. Farmer, the STEM club coach.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? All right. I want to say first and foremost, I congratulate you guys. They never gave up. They tried very hard, and they were able to come up. And as you mentioned, we were by far the smallest team. The nearest team above us was probably double to triple our size. And even with that in, you guys still did amazing. And so I'm very proud of you guys. Congratulations. So what I'm going to do, you guys are going to be getting a certificate. Fist bump everybody on your way, and then we'll be over there, okay? So first and foremost, we got Zachary. Jasleen, Jacob, Elijah, and Christopher. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. I can't wait till next year to win again.
And next, the Illinois Elementary School Association Wrestling State Qualifiers. It looks like we have 3 schools: Humphrey, Jane Addams, and Lukanzik.
The Lukanzik wrestling team had a lot to be proud of this year. We finished the regular season with an 8-3 dual meet record, and the students that I'm about to introduce definitely made key contributions to the success of our team. My first acknowledgement goes to 8th grader Danny Dalek. Stay here for a second. Danny wrestled at 185 pounds throughout the regular season. He had a regular season record of 20-4. He took fourth at the 26 Team O'Brien tournament and wrestled back hard for third place finishes at the Dale Keith, the Panther Invite, and both the regional and sectional tournaments this year. Danny came into his own this year as a varsity starter and qualified to be a second-day competitor at the state tournament. Ladies and gentlemen, he has some of the biggest hands I've ever seen on an 8th grade student, and he is still growing into his size 14 shoe. Danny Dalek. Our next state qualifier told me at the beginning of the season that he was going to be a state champion this year. Although falling short of his goal, Pedro cut the corner this year at the tail end of the season, taking first place at regionals, second place at sectionals, and became a second-day state competition qualifier at the 95-pound weight class. He's a 7th grader and still has yet another year to accomplish his goal. Ladies and gentlemen, Pedro Hernandez. Our last state qualifier is an 8th grader. He placed third in state last year as a 7th grader and had an overall record of 34-1. He was taken down just 5 times throughout the season and won the majority of his matches by either pin or tech fall. Jaden took first place in each of the tournaments we wrestled this year, in addition to being a regional champion, a sectional champion, and remained undefeated this season until his finals match at the state tournament. The state finalist he lost to had beat 4 previous times this year. In addition to excelling on the mat, this young man has also earned a fantastic 4.16 cumulative GPA. Ladies and gentlemen, your second place finisher at 135 pounds, Jaden Calderon.
Good evening. My name is Ben Hart, representing the Hubert Humphrey Middle School wrestling team, and this behind me is Coach Rachel Delamorte, also representing Mr. Tony Clark, who couldn't be here this evening. To begin, we had almost certainly the best wrestling team we've had in over a decade, perhaps even further back, but the memories have been lost. As an English teacher, I feel like I have to use a metaphor here. It was like we were gifted a Ferrari that we didn't know how to drive at first. It was too powerful. So we learned how to kind of rein it in. And out of that context of the excellence of our team, 2 wrestlers emerged, and potentially 3. I have a quick story. BJ should be here, but as the regional rules are, you can only step on the scale twice. He stepped on the scale, he was a little bit over, so he took off his socks, and he stepped back on the scale with his socks in his hands. So we'll have to work on that for next season so it doesn't happen again. But as for the 2 that made it, the first I'd like to introduce is DeAndre Franco, if you could stand here. As I said, we had a very exuberant and spirited team, and we needed someone like DeAndre because he's very careful, he's very methodical, he's very stoic, and he has a very chess-like demeanor. He's very careful, and he thinks through everything that he does. And that became an immense model for our wrestling team and program to look up to him because he's quite a good wrestler. He made very few mistakes in competitions or in practice, and it took me by surprise sometimes. I usually walk around during practice and look for things I can do to point out to wrestlers how they can improve themselves. And after 50 times passing by DeAndre, I realized I never had anything to say to him. So I'm like, what the heck's going on? I look a little bit more carefully at him, and he just picks moves and he does them with A+ accuracy. And so what I end up having to work with him on is taking more risks when it calls for it. When sometimes you have to take risks in the final period when you're down by points or whatever the case is, and he took to it quite well. We also we talked with him about calibrating his diet very carefully to maximize his strength and his stamina. And so he just felt like a very accelerated wrestler who could handle curriculum at an accelerated level. As a 7th grader, he got 4th place at state, and we're very proud of him for that. And as a 7th grader, it's quite impressive. We hope to see him at 1st place next year at the state meet. So with that said, I'd like to congratulate DeAndre. Next up is Juels Flores. And he's an 8th grader, and he's an absolute role model for our team, as 8th graders are in a middle school program. They look up to him. He has a warrior spirit, and he shows people what it's like to be aggressive and assertive and really want to win. He's a tough guy. Look at him. He's a tough guy, and he's got immense style. You should see him rocking the Adidas Yeezy Foam RNNRs in Stone Sage. It's unbelievable. And he's got beige swag from his headphones down to his shoes. He didn't wear them today. I wish he did. They're in the car, yeah. Anyway, there's no challenge that Jewels will not face. There's no challenge he won't rise to at all, including constantly trying to wrestle us coaches and take us down. It didn't work. He is an 8th grade. He came in 6th place. Again, we're quite proud of that. And as an 8th grader, it's bittersweet because we won't be seeing him next year, at least at Humphrey. And it's my hope that Jewels recognizes the supreme influence that he is, and he uses it to help others, which I know that he can. So with that, I'd like to congratulate Jewels Flores in his 6th place.
Good evening. My name is Art Tansel, Valley View Community, school board members, senior leadership. I need a minute here because I've been coaching now for 12 years, and this was the first year where Jane Addams was able to pull 40 kids to come out for the team to start the season, and we held on to about 36 of them for most of the season, which the other wrestling coaches can know. Sometimes kids come and go with wrestling. Sometimes it's not for them. So that was awesome. In addition to that, at regionals, we finished 3rd out of 7, ahead of Humphrey and Brooks. Just going to say it. Sorry, but it's the truth. At sectionals, we finished 7th out of 25 teams, ahead of Lukanzik, Brooks, and Humphrey again. And not that I'm counting, but we all have inter-competition with us going on at the middle schools. So. And at state, the 6 student athletes behind me allowed us to finish 18 out of 73 kids that sent kids to state. So it was a pretty awesome season. And that couldn't have been done without the support from our principal, Mrs. Ruiz, and our assistant principal, Ms. Coster, as well as our athletic director, Mr. LeBrozian. But it's not about the adults, it's about the kids. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about them. Starting with Mr. Julian Paniagua Ruiz. He's a 6th grader, first-year wrestler, and at the 85-pound weight class. He brought a tremendous amount of energy to practices and his matches. He is very respectful, and he always has a smile on his face, which is amazing. Even when he was getting beat, he's just smiling, and it's awesome. Very, very rare. We are excited to have him for 2 more years. Hopefully he decides to stay with us. And he has a GPA of 2.8. One of our wrestlers, state qualifiers, was not here this evening. That's Messiah Crenshaw. He's an 8th grader. I should lead with, Julian was the lone 6th grader. Everybody else here is in 8th grade. So Messiah is a first year at 135 pounds. He was constantly learning and polishing his wrestling moves, and he's a real student of the wrestling craft. He acts older than he is, and he becomes a great voice of reason to his teammates. He has a GPA of 4.47. Gino Vargas is a 8th grader also and a first-year wrestler at Jane Addams at the 167-pound weight class. He is tenacious and scrappy when he wrestles, and he doesn't give up. He's enthusiastic and he's a hard worker. He also is amazing as soccer as a goalkeeper. He has a GPA of 2.7. Next, I'd like to call up Logan Sagavo. Oh, you're right there. There you are. Logan is his 2nd year with us, and last year he was very disappointed when he didn't do so well at regionals, and so he made it his mission this year to make state, and mission accomplished. He did just that at the 145-pound weight class, which was very tough for Logan because he is a very fit young man and has a very hard time losing weight, so it was a challenge to get him to make 145. And I think the first time we got the entire season, the state series season, everybody got a pound at regionals and sectionals because of weather throughout the state. Except for state, they didn't give us a pound allowance, and Logan made that weight. So that was number one goal achieved, and then number two, obviously, wrestling to the best of his ability. He gives maximum effort on the mat, and he's a lot tougher than he has yet realized. So I hope he comes into that and I hope he keeps with it. He has a GPA of 3.9. Mr. Raymond George is an 8th grader, and he was a first-year wrestler. He comes from a wrestling family background. He's got a brother and an uncle who were both state placers when a brother who was a qualifier and an uncle who was a state placer. And so I was giving him a hard time all season, like, you want your name on the gym just like your uncle? He's like, yeah, I want it. And mission accomplished. He was able to finish 5th overall in the state series, and he's very determined in what he wants to do, and that translated to very much success on the mat. Raymond? And I can't say that I'm going to get emotional about this next one, but he's been with us now for 2 years. And I have to thank Mr. Pavey, Mr. Hasselberg, and Mr. Wentz, who are also here, our other coaches, for working with all the kids, but really focusing in on helping Jonathan to maximize his potential with wrestling. Last year he was a state qualifier, which was great, but I think he attended that and he saw how much fun it was and how awesome it was to be a part of the Parade of Champions. And so he made it his mission this year to do that, and he did just that, and he got me to experience that as well, so I thought that was pretty cool. Again, as I said, he's a second-year wrestler, and I have big hopes for him, so do we all. He's the 2023 heavyweight IESA state champion, Jonathan Washington. We look forward to all the kids' futures, and thank you all for your time this evening.
Next on the agenda is 5.3, our spotlight video. Gabby Myers, campus social worker at STEP.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Zach. And congratulations again to all of our honorees this evening. We're very proud of you and your accomplishments. Please continue to work very hard. We love to spotlight our student success academically, athletically, curricularly, co-curricular, and we also love to spotlight our staff and educator success. The beginning of March was the U.S. National School Social Work Week, highlighting school social workers across the nation and appreciating them for their hard work that they do with our students to help them with their social, emotional, and academic success. So in recognition of School Social Worker Week, we'd like to highlight one of many of our amazing school social workers and have a spotlight on STEP campus social worker Gabby Meyer.
Scuba diving is something that I always found interesting, but terrified to do. But my husband actually talked me into it. We had a destination wedding and wanted to dive while we were there. So that's how I got into it. And it's amazing. It's like being in another world.
Put into words as best you can what the experience is like when you're down there, when you're underwater for a while and you really become part of the environment. What's that like?
Incredibly peaceful, very peaceful. All you hear are your bubbles. Other than that, it's very quiet. There's lots of exploring. It's pretty amazing when you come across some cool sea life.
Why did you decide to train for and run in marathons?
I love setting a goal and achieving it, and running had never been easy for me. It was very difficult. So over time, I just learned, okay, I've got the 5Ks down, what's next? And I just kept progressing. And then I really don't know why I decided to do the marathon. I think just for the challenge. And I loved it. So you're right, just like with scuba diving and the marathon, you don't just say, okay, I want to do this, and then you go ahead and do it the following weekend. There are, a lot of steps you have to take. So having this big goal and breaking it down into smaller steps, lots of commitment and perseverance, and very mental, right? A lot of mental preparation that goes into both scuba diving and running a marathon.
Scuba diving and running marathons both involve getting out of your comfort zone, making a commitment, and ultimately accepting a challenge. Explain how that relates to what you try to get your students to do here at STEP in getting out of their comfort zones and taking on challenges and ultimately succeeding on those challenges.
We're teaching students how to take everything that they've learned, all of these previous years of school, everything they're learning from us now, all of the functional skills, and then applying those skills out into the real world. So whether it's the community or their jobs, so teaching them, once you have this goal set, let's break it down into smaller goals. So, teaching them that despite whatever barriers you have or limitations, there's a way to work with those things. And really focusing on their perspective and thoughts about these situations, because sometimes those could be the biggest barriers, are the way they think about things, the way they think about themselves. Same thing with scuba diving or running a marathon. If my head was not in the right space, there's no way I could have completed either of those.
How does your role as school social worker here at STEP fit into VVSD's commitment of meeting the needs of every learner every day?
A big part of that is helping to meet our learners' social emotional needs. So I think if the mental health piece is overlooked and not addressed and supported, there will be a lot of barriers that these students will face.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Myers. And thank you to all of our school social workers and all of our related service personnel.
The treasurer's report, Mr. Renish.
Thank you. The Treasurer's Action Report 6.1 for the month of February includes the normal schedule of financial reports such as the balance sheets, summary of revenue and expenditures, interim obligations, and debt service payments totaling $9,838,172.20 for your approval.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
And President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes. Motion passes.
6.2 scheduled bills. The scheduled bills for the month of March, we have 6 funds totaling bills payable of $3,679,918.70 for your approval.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any questions, discussions? Seeing none, hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes.
In your packet, you have a 6.3 summary of investments for the month of February, along with 6.4 for state funding update, 6.5 property taxes received, and 6.6 all schools trust account activity. This is an informational agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Renish. I have a quick question for you. Over the weekend, there's been a couple bank failures, and we've had a few questions that have been asked to us. How are our finances, to let the audience know and also everybody at home watching, please?
Thank you for the question. So the district, there's state law that governs on how the district can invest its dollars, but the district also has policy that limits what we can invest in and what we can do. And it's policy, I think, 4.3, revenue and investments. And everything that we do has to be 103% at minimum collateralized, meaning that it has to be backed and either held by a third-party entity for the district. So there are protections in place to protect the district. Like I said, all of our investments, all of our operating funds are collateralized, and it is subject to audit, and that's one of the things that our auditors always review and look at to ensure when you get the audit report to let the board know that we are following and adhering to those policies.
Thank you so much. Consent agenda items. Ms. Kinder.
Okay, there's 4 items we're seeking approval on under consent. 7.1, board meeting minutes, February 27th, 2023. 7.2, executive session meeting minutes, February 27th, 2023. 7.3, facility dog caretaker agreement at Beverly Scoff Elementary. 7.4, gifts to Irene King Elementary School and Dr. James Mitchum Early Childhood Center.
Looking for a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Having the motion and the second, any questions, discussions? Seeing none, hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes. 8.1, Board Liaison Report. Anybody from my right? And anybody from my left? This weekend, we had the opportunity to attend the Valley View Enrichment Foundation. A couple of our board members are on there, and we had a very nice time. It was nice. They raised a lot of money for grant money for the children, and the teachers spent a lot of time writing those grants, and Ms. Sikora over there goes over those grants in all her free time in order to decide who's the winners. So if everybody wants to know for the next few years, that's the lady that you have to get the grants through. Be nice to her, she says. Okay. Next on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anyone that would like to address the board? If so, please state your name and remember that due to time restraints, you have 5 minutes. Action report, human resources, Dr. Nash.
Thank you, sir. Action Report 10.1 is our consolidated action report. We are seeking your approval this evening on all items as presented.
So moved.
We have the motion and second. Any questions or discussions? Seeing none, hearing none. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
And President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes.
Thank you. Action Report 10.2 is approval of Board Policies 720, 520, 5250, and 5330. These policies were presented for information at our prior board meeting. They reflect recent changes in Illinois School Code and state and federal law. They've been reviewed by council and appropriate senior administration. We're seeking approval at this time on all 4.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussions? Seeing none or hearing none? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes.
And Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Action Report 10.3 is Resolution Number 2325, which authorizes the non-reemployment of part-time teachers and teachers hired under a temporary contract. We're seeking your approval on the resolution as presented.
So, second.
A motion and a second. Questions or discussions? Hearing none, seeing none. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
And President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes, motion passes.
Action Report 10.4 is Resolution Number 2326. This authorizes the non-reemployment of part-time and temporary educational support personnel who are hired on, again, part-time or temporary contracts. We're seeking approval of the resolution as presented at this time.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussions? Seeing none, hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes. 11.1, Mr. Renish, think you're spending some of our money with Mr. Lopez.
11.1 is the action item for the Phase 4 of the north parking lot at Bolingbrook High School. This project was publicly advertised, and on February 28th, bids were open and read out loud. 7 contractors submitted bids. The lowest responsible bidder was Orange Crush LLC. Attached to the memo in your packet is an architect's letter of recommendation, the bid tally worksheet, and the site drawing showing the Phase 4 scope of work. So the administration is recommending that the Board of Education approve Orange Crush LLC for the site improvement project at Bolingbrook High School, Phase 4, in the amount not to exceed $222,600.
Second.
Any questions or discussions? Seeing none, hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
And President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes. Motion passes.
11.2 is an action item for Phase 3 for the transportation staff parking lot, which was originally built in 2006. This project was also publicly advertised, and bids were opened also on February 28th and read out loud. 10 contractors submitted bids. The lowest responsible bidder, again, was Orange Crush LLC. Attached to the memo is the architect's letter of recommendation, bid tally worksheet, and site drawings for the Phase 3 scope of work. The administration is recommending that the Board of Education approve Orange Crush LLC for the site improvement project at the Transportation Center Phase 3 in the amount not to exceed $186,700.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions, discussions? Seeing none, hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell? Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes, motion passes. Superintendent Kinder, student due processes, 12.1.
Thank you. We are seeking approval on 12.1 student due process cases A and B as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussions? Seeing none, hearing none. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Zach?
Yes, motion passes. Superintendent information reports, 13.1. Superintendent update.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Zach. Tonight for my update, I have a message specific to safety, support, community, and partnership, as well as some general updates. And then the remainder of the information will come related to responsive classroom in the social emotional learning domain, as well as an update on our early childhood programming and our grading and assessment programming as well. After an incredibly difficult week last week, I feel it's important that we recognize the strength and support of our school community and the larger community on the heels of tragic and senseless gun violence that claimed the lives of 2 of our students and 1 family member in Bolingbrook. We are grateful for the incredible support within the district and from multiple partners as our crisis response teams, leaders, staff support students and adults with the start of their grieving and recovering process. The care and compassion in our schools and in classrooms is a testament to the supportive and caring culture that we've been developing and prioritizing so greatly in our work. Seeing our youth supporting each other as a true classroom family or peer group family, and also caring just as much for the adults who care for them, have been glimmers of light in an otherwise very dark time. The support from partners, community agencies, and individual community members shows the strength and love in our community. As much as we wish that acts of violence in homes, communities, schools, or places of business were isolated or rare, we know that's not the reality of the world in which we live. And as proud as we are that as a district we have prioritized school safety, we know that we can always do more to continuously improve our current efforts, practices, and procedures, and grow in our partnership with our local agencies. Safety in our schools and in our community is our collective responsibility. We need the support of parents, families, staff, students, local agencies, and community partners. We need to continually ask ourselves, where can we evolve, grow, and improve? What can we learn from what has occurred? What is working well that we should strengthen even further? The ongoing effort to assess our comprehensive and balanced approach to school safety is more important than ever. We also realize that this dialogue must include steps to engage and communicate with our stakeholder groups, and we must not grow complacent in that. In upcoming communications and board meeting updates, you can expect updates related to school safety in the areas of prevention, assessment, intervention, and management. We have a district safety committee as well as threat assessment teams, as from our director of safety and security and our safety and security team to the leaders in our buildings and the teams at the district level and at the building level that meet regularly and will continue to meet. We're bringing forth updates as well as recommendations as we do on a regular basis. And I think that's an important part of the dialogue as we look to have a big picture look at what we can do to improve and grow together and continually do the best that we can to ensure safe schools and a safe community. And on that topic, I did want to mention the supports that we have that are only as good and as effective as they are if we're able to connect them where needs exist. So with our team, with our partners from our district crisis response teams and our clinicians and service providers, and the structures we have in place to provide support in our schools, as well as a Care Solace network that we have to connect families, staff, and students with resources in the areas of mental health. In the month of March, we have been celebrating Women's History Month as well by empowering the next generation. So we wanted to take a moment to spotlight that as a district. We have many young, amazing leaders in our district and future leaders in our district, and we are grateful for them. We had some exciting enrollment changes with enrollment at the buildings, and it's been very cool to see our incoming class of 2036 visit their new schools and start to make that first connection, which is so critical with connection and belonging that starts at the earliest ages, and we're going to hear about early childhood, so even earlier here very shortly. So if you know a young person who will be 5 by September 1st, please encourage them to check us out online or to give us a call, and we can get them set up with an appointment at their school or at the district office. Pretty exciting times. Wanted to mention the Pathways to Professions Career Expo that will be taking place tomorrow and Wednesday at the Athletic and Event Center here in Romeoville. And our students, many of our students, a good number of our students will be attending. And then it's also open to the public on the 15th from 2:30 to 5. And this is a great connection from many resources, businesses, the Workforce Services Division of Will County, and countless other partners. So please spread the word. It's going to be a great event. Something else to share with the community, to come out and enjoy some of the amazing talents of our students. The students at student performers at RHS opened their musical Pippin just this past weekend, and will be going next weekend as well. And then Bolingbrook High School student performers will be on stage starting March 17th. So they're opening up this weekend. So come on out. They have amazing talent. We have upcoming updates for you in March and April specific to responsive and caring culture, and then we'll have some programming spotlights in the area student services department as well. And then just a couple reminders. We are closing in only one more board meeting until we have a spring break week respite, April 3rd through 7th. So mark your calendars and be sure to check us out on our social media platforms. Our schools and teams are doing an amazing job growing their social media presence and getting the word out and telling our story through our students, our staff, and our people. And there are so many great stories to be told. So please join us in some of those amazing celebrations. And finally, the 5 Essential Survey is open through the end of March. We are hitting some milestones in student and staff response rates, and several of our buildings are getting close to the charge of 20% response rate from families. So please check out the link online and share your voice. Okay, with that, I'm going to invite up the first information report, 13.2, responsive classroom. Mr. Adam Herder, Executive Director of Educational Services, 612.
Good evening. So the information report this evening is regards to a program named Responsive Classroom that the district has engaged with, and we are seeking approval to continue engaging at an even more significant level with this group as a partner. So tonight is essentially information about that partnership and the services that the Responsive Classroom program will provide for Valley View. I'd like to anchor our discussion both in our strategic plan around responsive and caring culture and learning and growth. In both of these areas, as you'll see, the responsive classroom approach is a crucial piece of our work in creating a culture of belonging, as well as a culture that encourages students to succeed academically. Thinking also of our portrait of a learner, all four of the competencies within our portrait of an empathetic citizen, a critical thinker, effective communicator, and adaptive learner are pieces that a responsive classroom environment truly allows students opportunities to cultivate. So just a reminder, when we talk about responsive and caring culture, this is directly out of the district strategic plan, and it's talking about conditions for all of our stakeholders to have a sense of belonging and significance. And then in learning and growth, we're talking about opportunities to succeed, but also to persevere and advocate for your own learning. So the goal of our system ultimately is to improve student learning through a sense of belonging by ensuring that students feel they're valued members of the school community. So how do we go about doing this? So a bit of an introduction to the responsive classroom approach. It's from the Center for Responsive Schools, and it's a wide-ranging approach to creating a learning environment that allows students to be successful academically and socially emotionally. So the approach is based in 4 interrelated domains that you can see on the screen here: engaging academics, a positive community, developmental and responsive teaching and awareness, and then effective management. So you could see that it isn't just a program for social emotional learning, and it isn't just a curriculum necessarily for an area of academics. It's a way by which we craft learning spaces that students can have success through these wide range of strategies. Several research-based strategies are part of the responsive classroom approach. You could see them on the screen here. These are things that we'll talk about in a few slides about how our staff can receive professional learning in these areas. And something like a morning meeting sounds simple, but it's actually a very sophisticated, detailed process by which our elementary students, for example, begin their day with a morning meeting. And it actually has a set routine and protocol we can teach to our staff, teach to our students. It's a research-based way to get kids engaged in learning early in the day, as well as every other item on this list. Interactive modeling would be another example. We talk a lot about explaining to our students what we expect in the classroom. Interactive modeling is actually a research-based way to model and teach students what we expect from learners to be successful, and we've seen it bear out dramatic gains for us in the classroom. There is a significant research base around social emotional learning in general being very important, and we've talked about this at this podium as well. This school year, after our pandemic experience, of course, with students coming back to school having social emotional needs, but the responsive classroom product itself, and these are 2 studies to mention that talk about how the use of this approach is actually associated with higher academic achievement, increased interactions between teachers and students and students in the classroom, and a higher quality instruction. And then the interesting study at the Teachers College at Columbia University that was focused on basically return on investment. And without going into the detail, because I can't probably explain all of the detail exactly how the research study went, what was interesting is they found that putting money into social emotional learning, specifically with the responsive classroom product, gives us a dramatic return on our investment in terms of how proactively it arranges for kids to be successful, allowing us to not have to reactively be addressing situations on the back end, whether it be from learning loss or behavior concerns. Here are just some images of some of the aspects of responsive classroom that our staff have engaged in the past. These are elementary classrooms engaging in a morning meeting and also some Energizer activities. And then on the far left of the screen would be an example of the professional learning that is available to our staff. We also have a very short video for you here exhibiting an elementary classroom doing a responsive classroom activity.
Stand up, Valley, stand up, Lucy, reach up very high now, reach up to the sky now, turn around, now sit down, stand up, Roman, stand up, Damien, stand up, Daniel, stand up, Alan, reach up very high now, reach up to the sky now, turn around, now sit down. Hey, boys.
So what appears to be and clearly is a very fun, engaging activity, relatively simple, there's actually a lot going on in there that's strategic. One is to develop an environment for the learning amongst the students, developing relationships with each other, doing similar tasks. You can also see there's physical movement that's targeted and intentional in the activity, and they're using the students' names intentionally as well to have not only the teacher but the other students use each of their classmates' names, which also is an indicator of a classroom where there's a high rate of safety and the ability for students to learn at a high rate. So in terms of the supports that Responsive Classroom provides for the district, and we're seeking approval to continue, one is our professional learning for our staff. So there's a variety of different approaches that our staff engages in professional learning. One is there are 4-day cohorts that either occur in the summer or during the school year, where a staff member will be able to attend for 4 days of whether it's the basics or the introductory aspects. They also offer 4-day cohorts on more advanced options specific to middle school, specific to areas in elementary. There's also 1-day advanced options that we would offer as well for our staff to go deeper into like certain areas of the responsive classroom approach. The staff that have engaged in these have given overwhelmingly positive feedback. The other benefit we've seen to this training when we've done it is that it translates into the classroom. So often professional learning, the challenge is to not only offer opportunities for staff to learn, but opportunities for staff to then bring that learning into the classroom and truly impact students in a positive way. And the responsive classroom approach has shown that significantly. The other layer to this is consultant visits and support at our school. And so we'll talk about this in a moment, exactly what those are called, but those visits basically are conducted either on an annual basis or biannually, and they assess a variety of aspects of the school, partnering with our school leaders, but with an outside consultant based on a research-based rubric about what are the ideal conditions in a school for students to be successful. And our schools are able to set goals around those things for continuous improvement, which ties into, of course, our strategic planning values. So what we will be bringing back with a recommendation for approval at the next board meeting is these staff learning cohorts, both on a 4-day basis and a 1-day basis. Also materials that go along with those professional development opportunities, but then also the consultant's observation and feedback visit, which is the COFV. They're called kaleidoscope visits at our schools because the tool that they use to assess how well the school is performing in a variety of measures is called the kaleidoscope reporting tool. And so to allow us to have that be a consistent approach at all of our K-8 buildings into next school year, there's also a line item for that on this proposal as well. And so while a significant number, it is grant funded, and it is something that is especially important coming out of the pandemic for us to make sure that we are creating learning environments that re-engage students, and that focus on that whole child opportunity, both socially, emotionally, and academically. So it's something that's worked well for the district, and it's something we want to codify even further and pursue at an even more rigorous level, thus the information report and the request. Any questions about responsive classroom?
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Herter. I'd like to invite down our phenomenal Dr. James Mitchum Early Childhood Learning Center leaders, Principal Jackie Brown, Principal Tanya Williams, and Assistant Principal Karina Lopez.
Good evening, School Board, Superintendent Kinder, and the entire Valley View community. As stated previously, we're here to kind of tell you about some of the great things we have going on at the Early Childhood Center, including some early childhood and kindergarten transition systems that we have in place. As Superintendent Kinder just mentioned, my name is Jackie Brown. I'm one of the principals that serves at the Early Childhood Center. We also have, there she is right there, Tanya Williams, who is the other principal at the Early Childhood Center, and Karina Lopez, who serves as our assistant principal. There's us. And then we had to, of course, in talking about what's going on in early childhood, we had to include a picture of our amazing staff because we couldn't do what we do so well without all of these wonderful people, all 143 of them. So we've touched quite a bit tonight on Portrait of a Learner, and we've also talked about some of our strategic plan priorities, and we're going to talk about how some of these things are embedded in our practices at early childhood, focusing on learning and growth and equitable systems. But like I said, through our presentation, you'll see that we embed all of these priorities in everything that we do. One of the strategies focuses is we also talk about being developmentally appropriate. That's what we do at EC. Everything we focus on is things being developmentally appropriate. We also have a strong community outreach program, and we do proactively partner with families to create academic and social emotional learning and success for our early childhood kiddos. The celebration for us tonight, we have a celebration, if you see that big 644, that is the number of students that we currently have enrolled in all our early childhood programming. And that's the highest we've ever been at this point of the year, ever. We have ongoing enrollment because we're required to enroll students as they turn 3. Karina will talk about that in a little bit. But currently we have 547 at the Early Childhood Center. We have 2 full-day classrooms at Tibbet, a total of 32 students there. And then we have 4 classrooms at Irene King with a total of 65 students, which brings us to our 644. And that's truly a celebration that we're serving that many kiddos, that many little people. Just to give you an idea of the breakdown of our early childhood enrollment, so half-day blended, that is a general education placement, but it is the classrooms are blended with students with IEPs along with typically developing students, and students with at-risk factors and a few tuition-based students. So we have the half-day blended program, there's 298 currently, half-day blended dual language, 79, expansion, that's our full-day program, we have 146 students, expansion dual language full day, 36, self-contained, 63, and then walk-in speech are just preschoolers that come in just for speech services. How do we attract these students? How do we get students into our building? Through the child find process, which that's required at every grade level, but it's especially important in early childhood where we look for students that may have particular needs or special needs or in need of special education services. That is also done through early intervention. Students kiddos that are aged birth up and prior to their 3rd birthday who are in need of services or in need of screening to see if they qualify for service, we also do it through that process, and we will talk a little bit more about that too. We also conduct monthly screenings, and to date we have conducted 538 screenings of preschoolers, and our screenings will continue throughout the school year and into the summer. So that 644 will go up by the end of the school year. So we're serving a lot of preschoolers. This is just a breakdown of how the homeschools that our students will be going to. As you can see, Oakview is one of the higher ones, and Beverly Scoff is one of the higher ones, but we are serving students from every one of our elementary schools, so that would be as their home school. So moving forward, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya Williams. She's going to tell us about our SMART goals, and she's also going to talk to us about pyramid model, which is our social emotional learning framework curriculum. But I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity, and she didn't know I was going to do this, so she's going to kill me later. But Tanya has done extensive work with pyramid models, not just this year, but in years past when she was in the classroom. So as a result of that, next month she's going to be nationally recognized for this accomplishment. It's a national award. It's a big deal in early childhood. So it's like, the Oscars of early childhood. So we must definitely congratulate Tanya, and I'm going to turn it over to her, and she's going to kill me.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. So I am going to talk about our SMART goals. So we have SMART goals just like every other school. So we have a SMART goal in math where we're focusing on rote and rational counting. And in those principles, they include stable order, which means that the number counted would always be the same. So if a child counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's always going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we also are focusing on one-to-one correspondence, counting one object and saying the number counted. Order relevance, the order in which objects are counted doesn't change the total number. So if I was counting the number of school board members, even if I started at Superintendent Kinder and I counted all the way around, I'm still going to get 9 people up here on the school board. And then also cardinality. The last number counted will always represent the total number in a collection. So you ask, okay, how do we teach preschoolers this? Well, we teach them through play-based learning. So if I was working with a child in the block center and they had cars lined up, or they were building a bridge and they put cars on the bridge, by asking them, how many cars did you put on the bridge? Counting the cars. So that is how we incorporate math into preschool. It's developmentally appropriate, and it's called play-based learning. We're also focusing on literacy. And in the area of literacy, we're focusing on phonological awareness. And the things that we focus on is language awareness. We try to make sure that our classrooms are rich in print, they're rich in language, we're speaking to the children, we're focusing on vocabulary development, we're focusing on that words have meaning, we're focusing on motor imitation, singing to the kids, we do a lot of finger plays. We're also focusing on rhyming, words that sound the same, words that look the same. We're focusing on syllables, especially those big words. If I said the word impossible during a time where we're doing story time, clapping out those syllables, having kids count how many syllables they hear. We're also focusing on onset fluency. So if we take a child's name and we say Tanya, the T, and then you add the Anya, you put it together and it's Tanya. So we try to make it meaningful to children. So yes, in early childhood, we focus on math and literacy. Also, equitable systems. We also focus on not only on what the students are learning, but we focus on teacher practices. So we go into classrooms and we look at how well teachers are teaching certain skills. One of the things we're looking at this year is teaching behavior expectations to children. So we know children come from different various homes, and different various homes have different rules. So as a classroom teacher, if you were incorporating or expecting children to do something in your classroom, not just saying it, but teaching it to them. What does it look like? What does that mean? Having them practice those skills. And that's how we're able, by teaching the behavior expectations of what you want a child to do, then you're better able to teach them the math and the literacy. So our next slide focuses on the pyramid model. Now, if you were to look on your screen, the pyramid model is a framework of evidence-based practices for promoting social and emotional development. So we start at the bottom of the pyramid. It's called effective workforce. So what does that look like in preschool? Well, making sure staff have PD, making sure staff build relationships, making sure that we as admin are building relationships with our staff, getting staff buy-in. That's how we move in order So when we get to the other parts of the pyramid model, staff are more equipped to deal with that. A nurturing and responsive relationship, what does that look like in the pyramid model? Well, building relationships with children, making sure we're nurturing them, making sure we're teaching them the behavior expectations, the routines, the transitions, so that they're better able to grasp concepts such as literacy and math. Also, high-quality supportive environments. There is a lot of things that go into early childhood. The state comes out and they look at our practices in early childhood. They look at different centers. They look at block center, math, science. How are we teaching these specific skills? And if they're developmentally appropriate practices, are we doing it through play? How are we talking to our kids? The language we use in the classrooms. And then we talk about targeted social emotional supports. So what does that look like? Teaching children what feelings are. How does my face look when I'm happy? How does my face look when I'm sad? Look at my eyes. Are my eyes squinched together? Look at my mouth. How far apart is my mouth? Am I smiling? Just those big things. Are my eyes big? So we teach those specific skills in order for children to be able to self-regulate, to own their emotions, and to also recognize a friend's emotions. So teaching those friendship skills. And then intensive intervention. Some kids, you can teach it one time, you can teach it twice, but you need more intensive instruction. So that is the framework regarding the pyramid model. Well, that's okay. I'll keep going without the slide. That's okay. So we look at Tier 1 universal promotions. So we're looking at universal supports for children. So at a high quality environment, we're looking at early care, we're looking at the environment, we're looking at supportive, we bring the families in, we're looking at the home environment, and then we're also looking at nurturing and responsive relationships. That it's important for teachers and staff to build relationships with our children. You can't just expect a child to listen to you. You have to get to know them, get to know their family, get to know the family dynamics, get to know where to start building those relationships, taking time to get to know what they like, what they don't like. And then also that secondary tier, it's called the secondary prevention. So when we have behaviors, not to be reactive, but be proactive when we're teaching our children. So teaching them skills in order to self-regulate in that particular classroom. And then Tier 3 talks about the tertiary intervention, so bringing more of the family focus in, especially when it comes to behavior, making sure that we are wrapping the family, making sure that we're conducting those home visits so that everybody can be on the same page moving forward. So that is the pyramid model. The last slide that I want to talk about is called the emotional piggy bank. So one thing that we focus on in early childhood, we call it the emotional piggy bank. It's called the 5-to-1. So making sure that we are making 5 positive statements to a child before we're pulling from that emotional piggy bank. So when we're trying to self-correct them, we're making sure we're pouring into them and building them up before you ask them a question to take from that emotional piggy bank. So that's very important in our early childhood world. And now I'm going to turn it over to our assistant principal, Ms. Karina, and she's going to talk about our behavior expectations, family engagement, and our kindergarten transitions.
Good evening. So as Principal Williams was discussing our program-wide expectations, the Pyramid Model Leadership Team, which consists of various staff members within our building and various roles, have meet once a month to discuss what are we really trying to focus when it comes to behavior expectations for our students. What does that look like for EC? 3 to 5-year-olds, trying to get them to listen to you doesn't always work out if you don't approach them the proper way. So one thing that we, as a Pyramid Model Leadership Team, focused on was being safe, being ready, and being a super friend. The poster that you see, or the image that you see on the slide, is one that is posted in every classroom that teachers reference throughout the day. What does it look like to be safe in school? What does it look like to be safe at the playground? Throughout different parts of the building. So the teachers work as a team with the students to collaborate and have those discussions about what do those things look like? What does it look like to be ready? ready for school, ready to go home, ready on the bus. How can we be a super friend? Whether it's helping a friend within the classroom, helping your teacher bring you materials, or bringing the teacher materials. So our classroom teams use a variety of teaching methods to show the expectations and support learning of expectations throughout the day. They also implement different reinforcement systems to reward those demonstrating the be safe, be ready, and be super friend. So as you know, or you may not know, we have a lot of mascots rather than room numbers at our building. We have the mouse room, and the students have to earn certain pieces of cheese to feed the mouse. When they do that, they end up having some type of party. The kids decide, is it a bubble party? Is it a dance party? Is it a pizza party? So the students have a lot of input on what these expectations are, because they are a big part of what the expectations should be within the classroom. Family engagement is also a huge part of the pyramid model, as both Principal Brown and Principal Williams mentioned. We work on how to create opportunities to learn from our families, strategies for partnering with families to promote child outcomes, and providing supports and services that families might need to promote their child's skill development. If you see the picture on the left, that's part of one of our pyramid model parent training events, where we focus on benefits of using positive language at home. And then we just had another training that was implementing routines at home, and parents are engaged. They get to do make and takes. They get to understand our world and how their kids behave so well in our buildings, and how that can also help them at home. We also have events as our meet and greet, which is the picture on the right, where we try to promote being safe, being ready, and being a super friend to our families. Being safe, having the police department there, inviting the fire department, the VNA clinic to come. Being ready for school, coming to the meet and greet, getting to know your child's classroom, getting the students to drop off materials, and then getting a cute JMECC t-shirt for them to be ready for the first day of school. Being a super friend, getting a picture with our famous Jimmy the Eagle mascot, also known as Melissa, and enjoying a good meal with their families and getting to see some of their friends who they haven't seen over the summer. We also host other events that engage our families, as the Fall Festival, Winter Frolic. Some of our school board members were able to go, and now we're gearing up for our end of the year celebrations. But teachers also invite their families throughout the year, whether it's volunteering, whether it's having an end of a unit celebration. So families are a big piece of what we do within our classrooms. Kindergarten transitions are also heavily important in our building, as Superintendent Kinder mentioned right now. We are working on it, and we have been planning since early November, planning and gathering information on all of our early childhood kinderbound students and setting dates for elementary teams to visit our building and visit those classrooms. We collaborate with the assistant directors on student placements. We set dates with the multilingual department to schedule English language testing. And throughout the year, we continue that collaborating with the assistant directors, because we get students ongoing, as Principal Brown mentioned. We host observations from mid-January to the end of February with elementary teams to come and observe our students and speak with our early childhood teams to discuss those students. What do they need? What kind of, if they have an IEP, what goals would best fit them in the kindergarten setting? And then EC teachers are also welcome to visit kindergarten, so they have an idea of what to prepare their students for. Home visits are very important. EC teachers conduct a second home visit for all of our kinderbound students. So they are our teachers are amazing. They do home visits for every child within the building. And as I just said, we have ongoing enrollment. So that is a constant visit going to the house. And then our kinderbound students get a second home visit just to answer any questions for parents, prepare them for them moving on, leaving the nest that they've been in. Some students have been with us for 3 years. And then we hold meetings for kindergarten transition meetings, and elementary buildings are invited to those as well. And then they're off to kindergarten. At the beginning of the year, we collaborate with elementary admin as needed. Sometimes that transition from early childhood to kindergarten can be a little bit tough for some of our students. And so the elementary administrators or assistant directors will reach out to us and ask questions, say, hey, do you know this family? Do you have an in? How can we get them to be more present at the school? So it's really a team effort between early childhood and elementary.
So next, I'd like to talk a little bit about next steps. As I mentioned earlier, we currently serve 644 students going up this year. However, and that's great. That's a great celebration. However, if you look at this data here, and this is pulled from the Illinois Early Childhood Asset Map data, and that comes from the U.S. Census. So it reflects all the children in the Valley View region that are under age 5. So it goes from, and it's broken down from under a year old, 2 years old, as you can see, and so forth. We have 6,511 children under the age of 5, and we're only currently we're only serving 644. So that's, even though we're doing everything that we can, there's more to be done. Having said that, what's next? We applied and received the Illinois Capital Development Early Childhood Construction Grant, and there were 238 people, school districts and other entities that applied for this grant, and only 8 districts were awarded it, and we were one of the 8. We received one of the highest scores on the rating scale that they use, and it involved, it's a potential $10 million award. So the proposal included, what we're proposing to do is to add an addition to one of our elementary buildings in Bolingbrook, because currently we don't have an early childhood building in Bolingbrook, and we would like to add on to Oakview Elementary. That's where it was based on. We met collectively as a team with senior leadership, with Buildings and Grounds, and other outside entities, and we looked at the sites, and based on where we're underserving and based on where the availability, that's how Oakview was selected. And we looked at population, we looked at demographics, we looked at need. So if in adding this, our hope is to add 5 to 6 additional full-day classrooms serving about 120 students. What would come next in that is that we are now in the process of doing a refinement of the budget proposal to receive. So we have to do that in order to get confirmation of the amount that we're going to get awarded. We're also, further review needs to take place with the Finance Committee for feasibility of the project district capital investment one time, plus staffing and operational investment for sustainability. And then the refined proposal will need to be presented to the board again and to seek approval to move forward. But we're really excited. It was a process to go through this, but we're really excited about the possibility of expanding, because as I said earlier, we're doing a lot, but we could do more. So having said all of that, as you can see, we've got a lot going on at early childhood, lots of great things going on. We're excited, and I will open it up for if there's any questions for any of us.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have questions. I like comments. I like the little people. They say I'm the hyper grandma, and great grandma now too. So I just thank you guys for all the work, and I'm just looking forward to, like, say, I remember Baduras, we were just sitting there, some little ones out there, and then you guys came with that. They're out there, and we're going out to get them, and we know that that's where it starts, that they need that head start. They need an early start. And we, the Valley View family, going to come together and we're going to get them and educate them. So thank you guys, all you, for your hard work.
Thank you for saying that.
I have a couple comments too. One, obviously, glad Sophia is one of those 644. You guys do an amazing job. Every time I go attend something, it's just more and more impressive. And secondly, hopefully we can look at that grant that you got and see if we can expand on that a little bit, because 120 is still short of the 1,900 or so that you had that were in their age range. So I am all for that. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you for doing all that work.
Well, thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
I just have one comment. I want to thank our amazing leaders and, of course, our amazing staff at the Early Childhood Center. This is Principal Brown's last year before retirement, but she is not sitting idle. She is very busy, and she's definitely helping us leave a legacy with early childhood and tapping into birth to 3, and also supporting in a phenomenal transition with Principal Williams and Assistant Principal Lopez. So we have a great team from the entire staff and the leadership, and we're going to continue to do great things for our little people throughout the community. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We thank you for all that you do for those children. Assessments and accountability update.
Okay, good evening again. So we have provided information reports at the last several board meetings regarding our Assessment for Accountability Committee. And tonight we are bringing a more substantive information report regarding Board of Education Policy 6.280, named Grading and Promotion, with a recommendation for adjustment to that board policy. Again, anchoring our work in our strategic plan and our portrait of a learner. Our strategic plan and our portrait provided an excellent mandate for the work of this committee to look at how does our assessment and our grading and reporting of student learning work impact students having the opportunity to be an adaptive learner, an effective communicator, a critical thinker, and an empathetic citizen. And how do those things impact our students' ability to learn and grow, and also in an equitable way so that the system works for every student, not just most students. We have a website dedicated to the work of this committee. It is www.vvsd.org/A4A for Assessment for Accountability. On that website, you can view recordings of all of the sessions. You can see the agenda from all of the sessions, along with information about the book study that the group engaged in, as well as further resources about grading, assessment, and other accountability topics. Before we continue, I did want to take a time out to thank all of the people who participated in the committee, and we are not done. So a proactive thank you for all the time that will be given going forward. But we had, going all the way back to this past spring, parents, guardians, students, teachers, administrators, as well as an outside consultant, along with a member of our Board of Education, Ms. Deb Sikora, who have given countless hours, both during the committee meetings as well as for follow-up discussions. We also have several members of our administrative team, some of who are here this evening, as well as other members of the team behind me as well, who you'll get a chance to hear from tonight. I also wanted to give a special thank you to Adrienne Patalecchio, who is a member of our administration center staff. She's a coordinator of strategic projects, and she has coordinated this entire project from setting up to taking down after all of the evening events, along with invitations and communication to all of the members of the committee. So thank you to Adrienne as well. So a brief timeline of the work of the committee. Before it was a formal committee in the spring of 2022, at a board meeting, we had some public comment regarding what is traditionally called our 90-10 grading policy in Valley View. A 90-10 really just referred to the prior version of board policy 6.280. Based on that feedback, we engaged in 2 listening sessions during that spring, hearing from parents, from students, administrators, and educators about what was working well for them in terms of our grading system, but also what was not working and what were areas that we needed to improve. In the fall of 2023, we formed the Assessment Accountability for Committee formally and began meetings. The committee meets once or twice a month, usually once a month, including a separate steering committee that several of the members have served on. Throughout the winter of this school year, the committee worked on defining what are priorities and non-negotiables for the work related to any adjustments to this grading policy. And then working into this early spring here, the committee crafted adjustments to Board Policy 6.280, which brings us to this evening with a presentation of our recommendation on these adjustments. Some of the history of the work, just going back to spring 2022 at Bolingbrook High School, it seems like a very long time ago. Some of the folks who are here tonight, you can see in these images. This was hearing from parents and students and educators what was working well and what needed to change. We then moved into the fall. Here's just some images of, you can see parents sitting with their own student. You can see several of the members who are behind me here as well who participated in these conversations. And then into Lukanczyk Middle School, where we've had a variety of meetings here. You can see the depth of the work involving presentation from our consultant, along with collaborative discussions and research into things like how does traditional grading work, what is proficiency-based learning, and a lot of other topics that the team dug into in seeking to craft adjustments to our board policy. So when we talked about adjusting the board policy, we said we need to base this on research of what's effective for every learner from an equity perspective. We sought an outside consultant, Margot Sekeli, who you can see in a variety of those images, who is from the Catalyst for Educational Change, a local organization that supports schools in a variety of school improvement topics. Margot's specializes in grading revision and systematic grading adjustments for school districts. And then, of course, we wanted to be aligned with our portrait of a learner so that as we were making adjustments to our system, it put kids in situations for opportunities to develop those portrait competencies. The first bullet here, based on stakeholder voices, I wanted to make a special comment that our committee has a variety of voice, and that was intentional, that we wanted to make sure we were hearing from a wide range of people with a wide range of opinions. What that means is, not everything the committee determined, it's not 100% that every single person on the committee is absolutely always voting in favor of those things. So our committee had a lot of collaborative discussion, and then ultimately we made administrative decisions based on the stakeholder voice that was gathered through that committee, through a variety of other staff surveys, in talking with students separately and talking with parents separately, a variety of info from a lot of stakeholders. But I did want to make clear and be very transparent, the committee is not, every member of the committee is really not necessarily accountable for all the decisions being made. Those are administrative choices based on all of the input and trying to find the best collaborative compromise that serves every one of our learners throughout our system. So what do we learn as a committee? Through our research, we learned that we needed to talk about more than just grading and 90-10. Our conversation needed to expand to how do we use assessment of student learning, how do kids receive feedback about their learning, what are our grading practices, and how do we ultimately report on student progress of learning. We did that in a variety of ways through collaborative conversations. We had a book study with Joe Feldman's Grading for Equity. And then the top picture here is a great example and one of my favorite parts of this. It's one of our directors at the Administration Center, Christy Vey, who's our director of mathematics for our 6-12 grades. This is 2 high school students in last spring sitting down and giving their input on what is working on the left side of that chart and what is not working and what needs to be improved on the other side of that chart. And it was those types of conversations and students' voices and educators' voices that really pushed the rest of this work. So we learned that through Grading for Equity, that grading practices and assessment practices have to intrinsically motivate kids to learn, not just to get a grade, but be motivated to learn for the sake of learning and the value that that brings toward their post-secondary goals, especially for students in high school. And so that's an important point that we've been considering. We also have to be actively, intentionally removing barriers that limit equitable access, and that we can continuously improve our system. So if anyone reads the Grading for Equity book, what you'll see is what we are proposing does not match exactly with what the Grading for Equity book says. This is another example of, it's one aspect of input that we got into the committee's conversation. Grading for Equity goes into detail about how to best serve students that typically have been disenfranchised or that we've had less impact on due to a variety of demographic factors. And so our team considered this, and I will say that we are proposing some changes to our policy, but there is more work to be done, which is why the committee will continue to strive even further to continuously improve a system that is truly equitable for every learner. So we'd like you to hear from some students and from some of our educators now about the work. We are going to play a video in a moment, and just wanted to highlight a few things from this video at Humphrey Middle School with Miss Nicole Williams, who is the teacher you'll see in the video. She's also here this evening, has donated a lot of time to this effort. You'll see how kids talk about focusing on learning, not just necessarily like what percentage and grade they need to get, how teachers are helping kids grow and develop through feedback, how kids are being owners and accountable for their learning, which is that large aspect of what we're trying to encourage with intrinsic motivation around those portrait of a learner competencies. You'll see what we call proficiency scales, which is a key part of our work currently, but especially a key part of our work going forward as a committee to see how we can support all educators in using proficiency scales to help kids learn and grow. We'll talk about how assessments are used in a safe environment where students can take risks, not that they should be afraid of making mistakes, but that mistakes are actually highly valuable, and how students learn in those learning environments. And ultimately, when kids learn that way, the grades take care of themselves in the end because they focused on learning and our teaching practices have been highly effective. So if we could play the video at this point, please.
Do you get an actual grade on your cool downs?
No, it doesn't go into the grade.
So tell me more about how does that actually help you when you're getting these daily cool downs that you do? How does that help you know what to do tomorrow or the next day or moving forward?
So let's say like I think I understand something, but on the cool down that you give us at the end of the day, it shows that that I got it wrong. It helps me know that the next day that I need to go over there and ask you like, what if I don't understand, like what did I do wrong, and like are there extra problems that you can give me to help me excel at learning?
Do you find that the feedback I give you is enough for you to move on in your learning?
Yes, but yes, I do feel like it's enough for me to move on with my learning.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Like sometimes when we get our cooldowns wrong, you kind of like circle it and be like, oh, try this again or something like that. So give us like more help instead of us trying to go to you and ask for more help.
So you're able to look at your cool down, and based on some of the notes I write or feedback I give, it might be enough for you to figure it out on your own?
Yeah.
And do you ever find that sometimes you do need more support based on feedback?
A little.
And what would you do in a situation like that?
If I needed more support?
Yeah.
Maybe, like sometimes come to lunch with you and like study more a little.
Okay. Now that we've talked about our day-to-day progress and monitoring our feedback, tell me a little bit how proficiency scales help you long-term in a unit.
So it will go from beginning to approaching to proficient and to excelling. Basically, those proficiency skills can kind of like help me as a learner to see what I've done wrong and maybe try to fix it. Like beginning will be like, oh, I need a little bit more help. Approaching, maybe I just need a tiny bit. Proficient meaning like I'm good and excelling, like I can do this all on my own.
Okay. So we talked about some of our day-to-day things, and one of the things we use in class is our binders to help us monitor our learning in a unit. Can you tell me a little bit about how this tracking system with all the symbols we use helps you navigate your learning throughout any unit that we do?
The tracking system helps me because this is where we log our cooldowns, and like if we have a cooldown that like we had a problem on and we want to do like extra help with it, there are lessons that are similar to the cooldown where we can like see where we can do more problems and make sure that we understand it, and then we can take the problems to you and make sure that they're correct and see if we get the lesson that we're talking about.
Do you mean the extra problems that go with a cool down?
Yes.
So, and is there a place for you to self-check those answers?
Yes, so on our Google Classroom, you have the self-check, and we just open up the link and it brings us to the slides, and then we can just go to the page number and then it'll be right there.
And after you do a problem that you are independently choosing to do, how do you use these symbols to help you determine your progress when you're doing those pieces independently?
So if I go to the Google Slides and I go to check if my answer is right, and let's say it's correct, then I'll put a check mark by the lesson that I was doing, which is in our key, and that check mark represents doing correctly by yourself, and that just helps me know, like, if I need to go back through here again to see, like, some lessons to see if I messed up on something before we have, like, a test, then I know that, like, I'm good on that lesson and that I understand everything.
So we wanted to be very clear about the type of feedback and assessment practice that we're seeking to achieve across every classroom. And this is just one example of a very positive approach happening in our Valley View classroom today. It also highlights the level of work our teachers put in to make sure that our students are successful. We also have a few other educators here this evening. Taylor Davis, who is a teacher at Romeoville High School. Nicole is here as well, you just saw in the video. And Caleb Scott, who is a teacher at Bolingbrook High School. And I believe Caleb brought a special guest student speaker as well. So I'm going to invite them up to the podium to share their experience with the committee, but also just with the approach of working towards being focused on proficiency and focused on learning as our best way to get kids to succeed at a very high level.
Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Davis, and I teach sophomore and junior English at Romeoville High School. I'm also a member of the Assessment for Accountability Committee. As a teacher in VVSD and a member of the committee, I've been working towards equitable grading procedures for several years now, as long as I've been in the district. The goal of these new procedures is to effectively assess student learning while considering possible barriers to that same learning. Some of the changes that we've implemented at Romeoville are using the proficiency scales mentioned in the video, getting rid of the zero, and making sure that our grade level teams are giving the same assessments and evaluating them the same way. The proficiency scales ensure that students can only receive 4 different levels of learning. Again, it was mentioned in the video: beginning, approaching, proficient, and excelling. These scales are used on every assignment and every exam. By using this language, students can stop focusing on chasing 1 or 2 specific points and instead use the scale to boost up to the next level of learning. Changing the grading scale from 50 to 100 also has benefited students because they can make up the ground when they fall behind, rather than continuously wading through the deficit the zero creates. This creates a better classroom environment for all students as they feel confident in their success and the continuous practice we engage in. Overall, these small changes have made grading and evaluating work a more collaborative process between teachers and students, as well as parents and guardians who might see it on Google Classroom and can clearly follow the proficiency scales as they look familiar on every exam and every assignment. The goal of our committee, and hopefully the teachers at all of our buildings, is to make sure that grading efforts in VVSD continue to be effective, clear, and create intrinsic motivation for all of our students. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Caleb Scott. I'm an industrial technology teacher at Bolingbrook High School. I have been thankful to be a part of this committee since last spring, and I think the work that we have done has been extremely helpful in trying to find just a more equitable grading system for all. We do not, in my department, have a expected consistent grading system, and I do view that as a bit of a concern as we're trying to solve this situation of not, having a fully equitable grading system for all of our learners. So I do think that the proposition of this power of zero learning, where we do set the baseline at a 45% in the grade book, will help our students stay afloat when they do have to miss time for whether it's an illness or a family concern or whatever it might be. I think that's extremely important to illustrate to our learners that they are not doomed if they do fall behind in class. Like, they can come in, they can make up that work and be able to, redeem their grade in class. I did bring a student with me tonight, Aaron DeMille, who is a student in my engineering class. And Aaron is just a phenomenal student athlete. And one thing that I thought was important is that he does have younger siblings who will come up into this district, into our high schools, and I know we want to set the groundwork for a more equitable grading system for them as well as all of our younger learners. So, Aaron? I think he's just going to say a few words just kind of about what the new grading system might mean to him.
Yeah, so like Mr. Scott said, I'm a student athlete. I take school very seriously. I have a 4.6 something or other GPA. I'm ranked 15th or 16th in my junior class at BHS. And I participate in 3 varsity sports throughout the school year. So in my experience, testing has always been a very important part of school. And I know when I was in elementary school, everything kind of seemed easygoing. And what I've learned is each level of schooling exists to prepare you for the next level. So elementary school was meant to prepare you for middle school for high school for college, or if you choose not to go to college, it's just life beyond that, and then college for whatever you choose to pursue after that. And for me, I didn't take homework as serious in elementary school. And then when I got to middle school, it really hit me hard that I was struggling to keep up with the workload. So I really had to buckle down and focus on it. And then coming into high school, I was in my opinion, a fairly good test taker. So I can come into a test with a reasonable amount of studying done and then come out with a fairly good grade. I have several friends who are on polar sides of this spectrum. I have friends who can do an hour of studying the day before a test, come out with 95 on the test, amazing. I have friends who spend hours a day studying for a test the week leading up, and they are happy to come out with an 85% on the same test that my other friends are coming out with a 95. So I believe that it is important to weigh the test a little bit lower because both of these different styles of learning, everyone's learning what they need to, but they're not able to demonstrate it in the same way, which is where raising the weight of the formative grade would benefit some of the people who spend more time studying because this is what they excel at. This is where they really show their strengths because they're able to hone in on the specific topics within that test and really come through and shine. And then with the current system at only 10% in the formative category, I know some students don't see it as worth it to do some of the formative assignments that were given because by the end of the semester, there's so many that not doing one, it's a 0 in the grade book, but 10 points out of 500 will not affect your grade at that point, especially in a 10% category. And then if you choose to go into college or the workforce, if you have this mentality of, oh, I can just not do this assignment or not show up to work this day, that will really hinder your ability and your potential further in your life. And they'll really hit this brick wall of where they have to adapt in the moment to be able to succeed in life rather than them learning in the school environment that every single test, every single assignment is important to excel in and focus on. So thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to elaborate a little bit on my video with my students and some of the things that you were able to see that we do in our classroom. And I really wanted to just share a story that just recently happened. The system that you saw my students speak about is a new system that I implemented this year and I have seen to be really effective and tons of work in their binders I have collected with 0 weight in the grade book on a daily basis. And a student came in to me just a week or two ago, and she comes in and she goes, Ms. Williams, I was studying last night, and I'm thinking, we don't have a test. What are you studying? She goes, I went home and I was just solving equations from what you posted for us to try and do. And I was like, and how did you do? Well, I checked my answers and I just couldn't stop solving equations. And it was such a powerful moment because I thought, wow, I didn't assign you anything to do. I assigned you no homework. I just provided you opportunities for learning, and you went home and decided on your own to solve these equations. And it was such a proud moment because I was able to see the effect of all the things I've been implementing this year in the classroom, with really taking away that focus on homework and grades and just providing students an opportunity to be learners and develop a love for learning because they're able to track their progress and see their growth and have options for what to do when they don't know what to do. And so I just wanted to share that because it's been really impactful in my classroom, and I am seeing the impact it is having on students when I remove those barriers and really just provide them a safe space to focus on their learning and their growth. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for those perspectives. Those are just examples of a few perspectives that echo a lot of the voice that we have heard from different students and different teachers, and the work that's being done in Mr. Scott's classroom, Ms. Williams, Ms. Davis's classroom, and Aaron, thank you. That was an outstanding testimonial from a student perspective. Shows you that there's a lot of work going on, and our ability to make things more consistent will be very valuable. So let's discuss our board policy. So board policy 6.280 is grading and promotion. The proposed policy that we are presenting this evening is streamlined down from a fairly significantly verbose policy to one that's more in line with the Illinois Association of School Boards recommendation, as well as research we did around several other school districts in the area, more similar to the policy they have. One thing I'll note is we did add, specific to Valley View for our version, the non-negotiables from our committee. Things like teachers need to be able to be successful in implementation, grades need to be accurate. So for example, we can't be, having students pass classes if they aren't exhibiting the learning necessary to pass the class. We can't have a grading system that artificially raises or artificially lowers student grades. And also a grading system that needs to be equitable for every student. As a result of paring down our policy language, that requires us, as with several of our other board policies, to have clear and transparent procedures that follow up with how we will enforce that policy. Member Sikora has coached us through that process in terms of how can we be very clear about both these non-negotiables that are on the screen here, but what will the procedures look like so that we're being transparent as we propose this new policy. So our commitment in terms of the procedures that will follow approval of the policy, and the draft procedures are posted on board docs as well. This is a summary. Currently, we have a grade that's made up of formative and summative scores, meaning basically work that leads up to the final test, and then the summative score being that final assessment that students are allowed to retake. Our current policy has that formative work worth 10%, versus 90% for those summative scores. Going forward in middle school and high school, we'll be counting that formative work as 20% and the summative work as 80%. And this is a very good example of a collaborative compromise amongst the voice that the committee provided, in that we heard voice from, and we've heard at this podium, anywhere from 50-50 and even split between formative and summative work. We've heard 80-20 as an option. Our committee also discussed the value of 90-10, or even in the other direction, 100-0, where the formative work would be not graded in the sense that we would focus on learning in the formative process, and then the ultimate grade would be 100% in the summative category. And so the administrative decision here in terms of the procedures is to move to a 20-80 format as an alternative to a 10-90 format. The goal being for us to focus in on the value the formative work has, and many of our stakeholders have spoken to that this evening. We should know how a student's going to perform on that summative assessment because we have assessed and seen how they perform in that formative process. But we also need to make sure that students have intrinsic motivation to complete the work, so that formative work needs to be engaging. It needs to provide equitable opportunities for students to be successful, and that's something the committee is going to need to dig in on now even further to make this implementation successful. Another change in our procedure will be that currently an M is in our grade book, so parents, guardians, students can look for this M code, which means work is missing, it wasn't turned in. So either the test wasn't taken on time, or the project wasn't turned in, or the assignment wasn't turned in. When an educator places an M, that will equate to a 45% value toward their current grade in progress. This is another compromise. In middle school currently, an M equates to a 50%. At the high school level, an M equates to a variety of scores depending on the course that you're in. So when we talk about the need to be consistent as a unit district, especially across our middle and high school grading policies, this brings us to a place of consistency at 45. I'll get back in a second to why we chose 45 specifically as a number. Our grading scale, and we spoke to it up here as well this evening, would remove a 0. And so we want to focus in on these proficiency scales that are proportionate. So if an A is 90 to 100, an F should not be 60 points of the grading scale, from a 0 all the way up to a 60. And so essentially what we would be able to do is students who are performing at the lowest proficiency level on that 100-point scale are earning, entering a 50 into the grade book. It does not allow students to pass a class if they have not exhibited proficiency or learning in the system. It does, however, mention what a variety of our stakeholders have mentioned this evening, doesn't put grades like a 0 or a 5 or a 10 that on a 100-point scale make it nearly impossible for a student to come back and perform at a high level. And the research we did as a committee, as well as the voice from a large variety of our stakeholders, is that those zeros and those lower scores in the grade book, while it seems like a real-world scenario and analogy that they would encourage someone to try harder, it actually disincentivizes learning and causes students to disengage from the learning process. And so that is a change that will be procedurally applied. It's in place in all of our middle schools already, and it's in place in a variety of classes throughout high school, but now will be consistent. Final exams, and this applies only to high school, will count as 15% of a student's final grade instead of 25. This came from research of a variety of other surrounding districts. Valley View was an outlier in the sense of being at 25. Other districts are anywhere from 5 to about 15% max. And so our committee had the conversation on what would be a reasonable adjustment to that so that final exams still are valuable. It's still a real world example of taking like an end of unit test that has high value, but it doesn't count for a full quarter of your grade when a lot of the other learning you've done should be valued as well. One thing I'll note in our policy, we currently have a retake policy for students on summative assessments, and at this time, that will not change for this coming school year. That is something our committee has talked about wanting to keep on the table for further discussion and potential improvement going forward, but at this time, that remains the same. So just a quick note, the reason we chose 45, we got a lot of input from our teachers, especially those at the high school level, who felt that if a 50 was the lowest score you would get for being at a beginning level of knowledge and performance, but you did work, but you're at a beginning level, so you have about a 50, that you shouldn't be able to have the same number in the gradebook if you did no work. And that there should be some sort of differentiation between a 50 at that low end of performance versus a 45, which recognizes that no work was put in. It still falls solidly in the failing range. And the good thing about our approach here will be parents will now be able to differentiate between if they see a 50 or an M, they'll mean different things. If you see a 50 or a 60 or 70, et cetera, you know your student is performing and at about what range they're performing at. If you see an M, it means that your student is not turning in the work necessarily, and that's something that our teachers will be reaching out to families, of course, and students to help them complete that work. But that M in the gradebook will be a great thing going forward for our families, especially those who want to keep tabs on the gradebook. M's meaning something that obviously you don't want to see in the gradebook because you want students to be fully engaged, and our teachers, that's their role, and to help kids be engaged at that level. So moving forward with the committee, tonight really brings us, tonight and then our next meeting where we would recommend approval of the change to the board policy brings us to the conclusion of really the first phase. It's honestly, it's the tip of the iceberg in a lot of ways. We're able to kind of reimagine what our board policy looks like. We've also identified strengths in our current system that we are keeping, as well as needs for improvement that we are making changes to in order to be responsive to stakeholders' voices. We've recommended changes to the policy as well as the procedures going forward. However, as we get into our next phase, we need to work diligently on how do we communicate changes to stakeholders so they're aware of the changes, the why behind those changes, how it's a balance of being equitable for every learner while also taking into account the variety of different feedback across a wide spectrum of feedback, on a spectrum of which not everyone fully agrees about every one of these topics. We need to be able to support implementation with professional learning for our educators. And then the team has already identified a few priority areas that they'd like to look to next in continuing that work, those being the retake policy, not necessarily having one or not, but really looking at improving that as well so that it functions exactly the way we want it to, as well as this idea of proficiency scales. So how can we get everyone in a place where phase one, really where we're at, is we're discussing how to logistically calculate a grade, which is important because we didn't have consistency and that needed to become consistent across our system. From an equity standpoint, we now have that. From 6th through 12th grade, students can expect a very, very, very close, consistent system in grading. Teachers still have a lot of leeway and flexibility in how they implement it, but students ultimately, that boilerplate is going to be the same. If you're missing work, you're going to know what it's going to count for. If you're at a beginning level, you know what it's going to count for, et cetera. If you're at an excelling level, you know what it's going to count for, and it's going to be the same no matter who your teacher is, no matter which class, and no matter which grade you're in. However, we need to talk about the world of how we calculate grades. The learning, though, comes from when we move beyond that to talking about that learning and what we heard tonight from these stakeholders, both from that video and also from Aaron. How do we put kids in a position, our students, to be autonomous, accountable for that learning, where we're giving them feedback about what level they're learning at now and what they need to do to learn at the next level. And they're not trying to learn it to add a few more points to their grade calculation. They're trying to learn it because they recognize the value of moving forward and reaching their learning goals. And so for our committee going forward, that is the focus, and we will continue to be supported by our consultants. We'll continue, anyone who is on the committee currently is of course invited to remain into these next phases, and we'll be seeking to advance even more people into our process. And when we began with our consultant, she was very clear. This is about a 3 to 5 year process to make foundational changes to a grading system in a school district, especially one of our size. And so I just wanted to thank everyone for getting us through year one here to the point we're at. And there's going to be things that people appreciate about the changes. There's going to be things that some people aren't necessarily ready for, and that's our responsibility to provide that learning and communication to get people to feeling very comfortable. But we are in a place of compromise that was based on collaborative voices, and now in a place where we can be very transparent that we have much more work to do as well to work towards a fully equitable system, as we always do in Valley View. And with that, any of us can take your questions.
Thank you for your work, your committee. Member Sikora, my only questions is, did you have any students on the committee that got C's and D's?
For the attendance at our committee, transparently, no. The students on our committee were performing similar to what Aaron described this evening. When we started out in the spring, talking to students about how they performed, we had a wider variety of students. I'll say that's a number one priority for us moving forward, is to expand the range of voices to be fully representative of our student body. Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
I have a couple things to say. First of all, the committee, I have to thank the administrators and the teachers that were on this committee. If they were on both, they were there after working all day long, they were there from 3:30 till 8 o'clock at night. It was a very long day after they'd put in a full day. Also in the audience, I noticed there are 4 of our teachers and administrators, and over here there are 2 more that were on the committee that if they would stand up so we know that they put in that effort. Rachel. And I know we have Kara Jennings and we have Christy Day over here who did not speak, who put in a lot of time and effort into this also. I asked them to be transparent. They were very transparent in allowing us to see the system that's actually procedure rather than policy. I would also ask if we can put out to the board members the other letter that you gave to me showing the retake policy so they can see that. Not that that's part of the policy, but I know it's a procedure, but I would like for the rest of the board members to be able to see that procedure, if at all possible. Okay? But thank you so much for everything you've done.
As a parent that's watching my kids go through the 90-10, I'm very open for that you guys revisiting this and doing something. My children all struggled and had tutors and stuff, so it's important to have the help, like Member Campbell said, for the kids that are getting those C's and D's, that their voice is heard. My boys didn't get it till they got into college. It was just like when it clicked with them. Sometimes it clicks at a different time frame in their life, so I'm very happy for that, and I thank you for all the time you guys have put into it. It's a lot more than people realize. Okay, legal service.
Just a comment that the economic interest statements are going to be due here shortly.
Okay, AFT, any report? Valley View Council, any report? Valley View Office Personnel Council, any report? None. Any old business from the board? Any new business from our board? The Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA, the link is on the VVSD website with log and formal FOIA items available. Thank you, Mr. Blaney. Announcements from our board.
I have one announcement. I'd like to thank everybody who did come to our dinner on Friday night. It was a large, huge success. We had a lot of fun, and we truly appreciate everybody who did come, everybody who contributed to this, so that we can get those grants out to our teachers next year. Thank you.
I have one announcement. On March 19th, the Hampton Park SAC is having a meat raffle. It is over at Lost Acres. It starts at 11 o'clock. It's basically a meat raffle and some other little things that are given out. That group actually donates a lot of money back to the children in our community, in both communities. They help the schools a lot. They help the sports, the pony baseball, the Revolution baseball. There's a lot of money that is given through the community, and it's raised at this, the Hampton Park SAC meat raffle. President Quigley and member JT Bederis is always there with myself. That's the way we give back to our community. It's one organization that we really like. Any announcements from our administration? No. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second. No roll call vote is needed. All members say aye. Aye. Thank you for attending tonight.